welcome to Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror movies and awesomeness. This week, we kick off a brand new retrospective on the Bloodthirsty Trilogy, a triptych of supernatural horror films from Japanese director Michio Yamamoto. Bear in mind, if you haven't seen today's movie, which is The Vampire Doll, we're going to be talking about it from the perspective of horror fans who have seen it. So warning, spoilers ahead. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, author of this winter's Young Captain Nemo from Fievel & Friends Macmillan Books. With me from Austin is Tony Salvaggio, tech director at Rooster Teeth, lead singer and bassist of the band Deserts of Mars, and lead guitarist of the band Rise from Fire. Say hello, Tony.
Howdy.
Howdy. So good to have you back. And also in Austin, speaking of being back, another gentleman who's actually been gone for even longer. Tony, you came back last week. Drew, it's been a while since we've seen you. Writer of the long-running underground comic series Halloween Man, winner of the 2018 Best of Austin Award from the Austin Chronicle. Drew Edwards, say hello.
I'm back. Good to be back. I hope all of you out in podcast land receive this podcast and it makes you happy.
That's beautiful. I think it's a wonderful place to start. And finally, also in Denver, as always, color commentary from attorney Julia Guzman of Guzman Immigration of Denver. Say hello, Julia.
I'm not a vampire doll.
You're not a vampire doll,
No
but
matter
you
what
are a
think.
doll. Okay,
Oh,
The Vampire Doll.
Heartwarming.
The Vampire Doll is a 1970 Japanese horror film directed by Michio Yamamoto. It's about a woman who goes looking for her brother after he disappears, visiting his girlfriend in the creepy castle she lives in Japan. She seems to have died, but may have come back as a ghost, and that is the beginning of the movie, basically. So, Tony, I know we started with you last week, but this still feels like something that Tony probably recommended above all else. So let's go, Tony, Drew, Julia, and then I'll go. Tony, The Vampire Doll, why are we here, and what are your opening thoughts?
So, there was a time where you could only get the Bloodthirsty Trilogy on like bootleg VHS if you happen to even find it at all. Arrow Video did an awesome release, and you can also see them on Amazon Prime, which is super cool. But yeah, I bought the DVDs a Blu-ray actually a long time ago, and was watching them so I could start fresh, share them with the rest of the crew on the podcast. And it's this like, hey, this is it's Toho, so Godzilla's coming out soon, so this was Toho produced a lot of horror, but these three are very kind of Western Hammer influenced Dracula movies. So this is really cool. I like the movie a lot. Again, it is very much, if you like Hammer movies, this is probably something you'll dig. If you like creepy horror comics, it kind of feels like some of those. I would be surprised if Junji Ito hadn't seen this stuff.
Yeah.
I would also be surprised if the creators of the first Resident Evil had not seen these movies. I mean, it's a Western style mansion. There's all this stuff going on.
Somebody on IMDb was saying that they wondered if Toby Hooper had seen it as well.
Maybe that would have been harder, but I mean, that doesn't mean it wasn't possible. But yeah, I think it's interesting. As Western influenced as it is, it's still very much a Japanese movie and has all of the surreal qualities that a lot of Japanese horror has. I'm excited to talk about it, and I just really dig that Arrow put this out and that people can see it. Especially don't have to have the Blu-ray. You can watch it on Amazon, which is for most people pretty easy.
Yeah. Yeah. And by the way, I think that Blu-ray came out, I remember ordering it in February, so about a year ago, and I think it ended up coming out, I think it was like May, so it's been out nearly a year. We've been just sitting on these Blu-rays waiting for the opportunity to talk about this. Drew, I don't know if you're new to this or if this is old hat for you.
I have literally never seen this before.
All right.
I feel like, as we discussed this, I think a while back, I feel like I have seen one of these when I was a kid, but I am not sure which one yet. It was definitely not this one. However, there is a lot to unpack here. This is, when we did the Vampire Hunter D movies, and when we did, God, I'm blanking on the name right now, but the other film we did at Anime Fest last year. We talked a lot about Japan sort of reprocessing and repurposing Western horror tropes for their own purposes. And this movie is almost a better example than Vampire Hunter D is, because like it doesn't have any of the science fiction elements at all. It's interesting that they call this a vampire movie, because it's not strictly speaking as a vampire movie that I would think of one, and yet I would say it actually reaches back even further than Hammer and delves actually more into territory of Universal movies, and especially the way the house looks, and and in particular, because of like the creepy butler and everything, this movie owes a lot to the James Whale Old Dark House. And, like, although everything about it that is borrowed from, Universal movies and the Old Dark House and everything is like, it's more so. It's like they lay it on even thicker. Like, we're not going to have lightning. We're going to have non-stop lightning. And it's going to be really almost obnoxiously loud. And, I found that kind of thing fascinating. And yet at the same time, like, I don't know why, but, it's something with a lot of, films of this type from this time period. There's also kind of a meanderingness to it. Like it doesn't quite have a very strong narrative. It's very visually beautiful, but like it has about as much connective tissue as a Scooby-Doo episode. Like it's really just two kids wandering around. In fact, there's actually a point where the Freddy character is like walking out and bats come out of the house, and it looks exactly like the opening of Scooby-Doo. And I mean that as a compliment. It sounds like that's a dig. This is actually what I enjoyed about the movie. Very weird, very 60s, very interesting. I think if you are a fan of gothic horror and you want to see it done through a slightly skewed lens, this is a really good movie to check out.
Cool. Thank you. Julia, I mean, what are your thoughts? I think you dug this movie while we were watching it.
Yeah, I agree with Drew on the weirdness of this film. I think that my favorite thing, I was kind of actually freaking out toward the end about how cool this was, and I was really excited to talk about it on the podcast. I love how they deal with the vampire thing, like the ghosts and and what happens when you die and all. Because I'm just so fascinated by anything that has to do with what people think happens when you die and ghosts and all that. So this idea of that you could hypnotize someone when they're about to die and therefore capture a ghost, basically, that was fascinating to me. And we'll talk about it more as we go through the story. But I really dug that. I've never seen anything like it. I thought it was very creative. I was actually going to ask Tony if that has been anything that you've seen in any other Japanese films. This idea that you can stop a spirit from leaving by hypnotizing the person when they die.
No,
can I give an answer for that?
Blue, like for me.
Yeah.
Anyway, like that was definitely whoa. Wait, what?
Yeah.
Cool, but also how? Okay, sure.
The only other thing I can think of that's kind of like that is the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, which is, of course, ancient compared to
I got one more for you, but I'll save it until after Julia has her thing, because I have a thought about this.
Go ahead, Jason. Tell us, what is your thought?
Trilogy of Terror by Roger Corman, I think is like, or which one was it? It's the Vincent Price one where they adapted the strange case of Mem Valdemar, which is about a guy who dies during hypnosis, or it's the other way around. Anyway, he is hypnotized as he's dying, and so he's stuck in his body. And that is one of the other major like influences that this movie wears on its sleeve, is all those Roger Corman, Edgar Allan Poe movies. And in fact, I'd say the plot here is more like one of those, or as much like, in other words, this is a hodgepodge of like Western influences. But it's not my turn. Go ahead, please.
Well, no, I mean that was mainly what I was going to say because the rest of it, yeah, it is pretty, pretty 60s looking, and it's pretty I wouldn't say shallow, but the story, yeah, I mean they don't certainly don't go into any depth with these characters. Not like we're getting to know anybody really super well. But I really stylistically I thought it was neat looking, but that was my favorite. And I love the effect of the glowing eyes and all that, and just
Oh man, that was such a
the lead
cool.
lead vampire chick is just so creepy. But cute. She's super cute, but also just creepy. I really liked those kinds of effects. Yeah, go ahead, Jay.
Well, no, so the film that I was thinking of is not Trilogy of Terror. I'm sorry, that's the one with the little doll, the Zuni fetish doll. Tales of Terror from 1962 has a segment in it, and so that's just 8 years before this movie, and it has a segment in it called "The Strange Case of M. Valdemar," where Vincent Price is trapped in a netherworld because he has been hypnotized at the moment of death.
Wow,
Uh,
that may be where they
and
got this. Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I think first of all, by the way, we're talking about that as though it's known, but it's like it is the it is the spoiler of spoilers. It's the big twist that you get later on in the movie. Um, I think this movie is a crazy hodgepodge of really wonderful. It's like got all this great Japanese culture, but it is just gleefully putting on and twisting around all these different wonderful influences, the groovy color of the Hammer movies, the portico of Oakley Court, that is seen in movie after movie, the the inside of like big, old dark house, there's just all this stuff just thrown together, and I love it, and then made very Japanese. I mean, and I really enjoyed it. I agree completely with what everybody said, which is that the movie itself, like, is sometimes kind of slow moving and confusing. Kim Newman did a special feature on the Blu-ray, and he says this thing that we've said before about some other movies that we love, and he said this movie is like what Tim Burton said about Black Sunday, which is, he goes, I have seen this movie a dozen times and I still can't tell you what happens in it. I love it, but if
Right.
you if you ask me to raise my right hand and recite the plot of this movie, I will not be able to do it. Now I've got some
I
bullets, so
disagree with that. I actually think that I could recite the plot quite well, and you know why? There's
why?
one reason, and that's because I could not watch the movie because of the credit, because of the captions,
Huh?
the subtitles, because I can't. I don't speak Japanese, so I had to focus on this film to watch it. So I actually think I know this film's better than I know most films because most films I tend to like look down at my phone or I'm like looking at what I'm just kind of doing other stuff as the movie's playing. But this one I'm
Point of
like, oh,
order
can't
about
can't
that.
look away.
Do you guys find that it's easy that do you find it harder to pay attention to movies now because we tend to have our phone laying around and you pick it up and look something up while you're watching the movie, or do you put the phone away, or how do you guys give a movie your 90 minutes of attention?
For me, it depends on the movie. There's some movies where I'm just gonna put it in the background, and I kind of want to just get the flavor of the movie. But if it's a movie, like I mean, there's so much media now
Yeah.
that there are some movies that are I'm just kind of sampling that movie, or if it's a movie I've seen before, but just kind of want to
Yeah.
relive parts of it, and then I'm doing stuff. But I've had multiple movies where I picked them up on Amazon. I started them, realized I was either too tired or there was stuff going on, and said, you know what, that one I'm gonna save. Like,
Yeah.
this movie deserves my attention. I want to absorb this movie as a cinephile. It's not fair for me to just kind of gloss over this one.
Hmm.
Mhm.
But to me, it's very contextual. I do tend to want, which is why I like to go to the theater, especially like a draft house. Like, I'm going
Yeah.
there to go to the temple of theater and watch a thing.
Yeah.
As opposed, it is really easy at home to get distracted. But that really depends. And I try to, if it's a newer movie, especially one that I think I'm very interested in, it's phone's off time.
Yeah. I find I have to put my phone, if I same thing. If it's something I'm just letting play, then this conversation doesn't even apply. But if it's something I really want to pay attention to, I find I have to plug my phone in another room and leave it there to be able to give the movie my attention, and because otherwise that distraction is just so common. And especially because there's all kinds of excuses. An actor shows up and you're like, that's that guy from that other movie. And so you pick it up and then you're wasting time and you're not seeing these images. And I don't know. Anyway.
Anyway, the point of all that was just to say that I concentrated extra hard on the film because I had to read the subtitles.
So let's get into it. There's really about 6 or 7 points in the film. We start out with Mr. Sagawa, the young Mr. Sagawa, going to visit his girlfriend, a la the movie version of The House of Usher, where, he's written and he's going to visit her. Technically, she was supposed to meet up at the train station and she didn't. He goes to her big old creepy house and there is met with bad news.
Well, he's first
yeah.
met with a butler who's deaf and mute that tries to murder him on sight, which
Right.
he does to everybody that he comes across at some point.
Yes.
And I have to say, this is some serious horror movie logic here, because if this happened to anybody in the real world, they'd be like, yeah, your servant just tried to chop me up with a hatchet. I'm gonna go sleep somewhere else.
Yeah.
Or also, you might fire that servant. I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah.
Do I have to call? Has anybody called the cops on this servant? And by the way, blaming. There are many things like it's progressive that she's hired this guy, but also, oh, hey, he gets choppy because he's deaf mute. Is not like that's a separate issue.
Yes.
I mean, I know this is the 70s, but bundling all that up into one. Well, I mean, he's deaf mute, so sometimes he has an axe as like. How disingenuous to people who are deaf mute who aren't axe murderer.
He's literally the only deaf mute person I've ever heard of who was also an axe murderer.
Yeah. There's
like, oh well, it happens. He's got a lot
I said the thing about firing him, and of course that wouldn't happen because we're dealing in a class system in this film where he is bound to this house. My favorite thing watching him was just watching him grumble. I mean, if he weren't always trying to murder people, he's basically just pissed off that there are people coming in and making him like, she's like, oh, these people are going to be our guests. Would you go and set up their rooms for them and also make some dinner? And he's like, grumble, grumble, grumble. Yeah, so it is really funny if you consider him being like a grumpy cat.
I guess I could go chop some dinner up with an axe if you. I like the idea of him solving everything. Like, well,
suddenly becomes the cook, the thief, his wife, and her lover. It's like, what are we eating?
Yes, I think this guy doesn't lose his job because he's part of the Igor union. I think there's a union of these guys, and they get. I think that this is what's keeping them from losing their jobs, despite being incompetent. I can't imagine this guy's a very good butler.
He's highly competent at chopping things. So
yeah, apparently not, because he never actually
successfully
kills anybody.
Well, we don't. Not that we've seen.
That we see.
Yeah, I like this idea of the Igor's union, though. Like they sent him one. They sent us this guy. So, I mean, we can't.
He's part of the great house.
There's strict rules about that, and so he's our butler. Most of the time, he keeps the house clean. I mean, there's a lot of cobwebs, but after the first few times that he chopped a few statues in two, and we had to replace some furniture, he quit doing that. And
to be fair,
now
butler's not supposed to clean the house anyway. So he's just if he's doing any of
it,
it's only. He's just, he's doing it reluctantly. So,
la di da. Okay.
No, because the staff. Remember, if you've ever watched Downton Abbey,
I love
that the staff is supposed to have like X number of people, and so when they only have a couple, in this case only one, but if they only have a couple of people, all these people end up having to do jobs that are just not their job. It's like, it's just not.
So, in
Anyways,
fact, let's talk about this house. This house, like we said, is a big old castle, and we can talk about two different dinners that happen. But the Sagawa goes in. He's met by the mom of Yuko, who is a very serene, quiet, calm figure all the time, and she is able to put up with just incredible amounts of like stress coming from other people, and just like serenely like goes, "Oh, that sounds very disturbing. Won't you have some dinner?" But she rules this rambling house, which has Western style furniture in it too. Because if you think about it, Tony, if we watch like a Godzilla movie from this period, don't they typically like sit on the floor and
Yeah, I mean
you know?
it's fairly typical. I mean, it depends on where you're at, but in general, most people are going to have fairly traditional Japanese homes. Of course, it's 60s and 70s, so they're wearing mod clothes. In fact, that's the other thing about her; she's dressed fairly traditionally.
Yes.
She doesn't have all the mod clothes and hip fashions that the other people have, but and that's what makes it interesting that she's also in this Western style home, which she explains. I think it was her husband, right? That
Her
or his,
husband's father
that's right. It's her
was
husband's
was
father. Yeah,
a like some kind of envoy to the
right.
United to the West. They don't make clear whether it was the United States or
They
wherever.
that
Yeah.
is only an excuse because they feel like this kind of movie needs a big Victorian mansion.
Oh, of
Like
course.
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
completely, and I love the fact that they worked out a contrivance so they could have that.
Yes. Yes. But you'd have to think about this guy who's an ambassador, like to, I don't know, to Great Britain, loves it so much that he comes back and commissions a big British style house, and and appoints it with big tables and stuff like that, and they all sit and eat at the table, and there, which means that this family, third generation now, is ruled by this guy who was obsessed with the ways of the West, because it wasn't even her husband, it was her husband's father. And yeah, and that's become part of their identity. I'm also thinking about the time period now, because her husband's father, that would be pre-World War II. That would be like between World War I and World War II for this guy to have been there. Anyway, and it's crumbling down. That's the other thing that they've taken from House of Usher, is that it's, because this is exactly House of Usher. The guy goes to the house. The girlfriend, in that case, she's not dead; she's dying, and the house is crumbling, and the freaky host knows more than he should. There's even the actually, there's even the creepy butler, except for in House of Usher, again, the movie, which is what they're thinking about. He's just not a crazy axe murderer in that. So yes, she goes, "Yuko is dead. I'm very sorry. Stay the night." And he goes, "Yeah, okay." And that's when the first vision happens of this ghost version of Yuko, who is so freaking scary. Who wants to talk? Anybody who wants to
well,
talk
she's
about the
creepy. I
presentation?
wouldn't say she's freaking scary. She's just creep. She's kind of like a less scary version of the character from The Ring, because she has pretty
Mm,
hair and she's smiley, but it's definitely kind of like this hunch. She's always hunched over a little bit, wears this white gown, and her eyes
yes,
glow, and her face is very white. She clearly has a lot of
She has the smiling demeanor of in Battle Royale,
mm,
where they show the girl who just won and she's on
yes,
all the news. She has that
yes,
look,
Mhm.
like this gleeful, I am straight up about to murder you, or
Yeah.
yes,
have murdered many times. Yeah, the pathos of her kind of ghost stuff doesn't really come across when she's in full on murder mode.
yeah,
She looks extremely scary, and the special effect with the eyes is great.
Yeah, I
yes.
love it.
And when
But
she
her
appears, it's just like, oh, holy crap, that's happening.
Right.
She usually just appear there. There's one point later
She The
when
jump
she
scares are
attacks
good.
somebody, and she just like moves like lightning, and it's really frightening.
Yeah, that was
How,
awesome.
Oh man, that was good.
She did. She moves so fast. No, but also I love the jump scares. Like I love the opening the door and she's standing there. That's
yes,
awesome. I love that stuff.
the girl has the actress has great physicality. How she keeps her, like Julia said, her shoulders are curved forward, and her head is curved forward and down, and then she's looking up from under her eyelids. Which is the effect of being hanged, that she's suspended somehow by the back of her neck. It's a wild
You
effect
should
just
be a
done.
writer.
You
Oh,
know,
thank you.
And it's cool too is that the actress is equally good at playing her interactions when they do flashbacks,
Yeah.
and then her kind of when she's just a wandering ghost, like very sad ghost as well. And she plays that range really well. There's not a double for her when she's in ghost mode.
No, there's
she
there's
she
only
rem-
go ahead.
she really reminded me of something. I mean, something out of a Sam Raimi movie. Like she's
Mm.
not quite as like grotesque, but like the physicality of her had this sort of comedic, almost
Yes.
impishness to it that I would associate with like Evil Dead 2 or Drag Me to Hell or something like that. Like there it was kind of funny in a
Yeah.
way.
She's neat. She's still alive. Her name is Yukiko Kobayashi. She was also in Destroy All Monsters, and she hasn't really done a lot since 1973. She seems to have retired around then. But although she does have a new movie coming soon, so I don't know what she's doing. It's called The Great Buddha Arrival. But
Ooh, that looks fun.
okay.
I need to see that.
But yeah, she was in Destroy All Monsters. She's wonderful. I love this opportunity we have to call out somebody who was just doing a fine job and then is doing other stuff. But wherever you are, Yukiko, we're happy that that you're healthy. So there's this wonderful moment that reminded me a lot of Halloween, which is very much in the future. If you're watching this movie in 1970, he looks outside and sees her at the edge of the woods looking up at her. Again, this is a guy who's been told his girlfriend is dead, but now he's once seen her literally walking around the house, and her mom's like, "Oh no, that's silly, go to sleep." And then the next time he looks down and sees her like standing out there, and she like skips into the woods, and the last we see of the poor Mr. Sagawa is that he chases her into the woods. He finds her at her gravesite, and then she stabs him. She
Well,
she
it's not
kills.
clear that she stabs him because I don't think it's clear that she's using a knife until later. It's that she just attacks him
I
basically.
saw the dagger.
You
I
did?
did see her raise the dagger. It's kind of in the low in the frame, but she clearly is using a blade for. So she's a weird ghost that's stabbing people.
So, but she's also vampiring, isn't she? Like,
Well,
isn't
she
were we
drinks the
assuming
blood
that
that
she's
she
drinking the blood?
cuts.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
she's a zombie that uses a knife. Like Jason, basically is
And she drinks
so
the blood, so she's vampire-y.
Let's
right.
not go crazy. Okay. Jason's very specific.
Yes, that's true.
You
No,
can't
Let's
just
not
go
let,
around
let-
comparing people to Jason.
I
So
take this very seriously.
I think she
Perhaps
is as unique. She's totally unique. You're right. Jason's totally unique. This girl's unique. She has a weird bunch of powers, and one of them is that she's stabbing people and drinking their blood. All right. So that's all creepy. Okay. And then we now have been following this guy for like 15 or 20 minutes. And now we jump to like swinging 1970s
Tokyo.
Tokyo. And Sagawa's sister Keiko is looking for him. And so she sets out with her fiance to go check out this place that he went to meet his girlfriend. And same thing. But now we're into the rest of the movie because now it's really the story of her investigation into what happened to her brother and what's the secret of this house, of the Nonomura house. So Mrs. Nonomura is like, "Oh yeah, come on in. Yuko's dead. Your brother left. You can stay the night if you need to." That they contrive a way. They pretend that their car is broken down so they can kind of look around. And there's really three segments. There's the part where they're investigating, then there's the part where they leave the house to go investigate in town, and then there's coming back for the confrontation. But
And all the while, you keep hearing this moaning, like wailing sound that may or may not be a woman, or it might be
right.
wind.
Right. There's a really creepy moment where the fiance of Keiko, whose name I've got the name here, Akira. Oh, I'm sorry, it's Hiroshi Takagi. So Hiroshi uh, says, "I hear that moaning sound," because he's like sleeping in the living room, and whereas Keiko gets a bedroom, but he's like sleeping in the living room, and he hears the sound, and he goes to investigate, and he goes like into the stairs down to the basement. He gets about halfway down, and then Mrs. Nonomura goes, "Hey, what are you doing?" And he
Yeah,
turns
everybody's
around.
really bad at sneaking.
Yeah.
It's not just the axe murdering butler, but also everybody. No one can sneak worth a damn. I mean, not as if that
Probably
they're
the
not
creaky floor.
spies. They're not spies. I don't expect them to, but
We don't know
geez,
what they
man.
do.
Right.
Plus the floors are super creaky, I'm sure, because it's an old house.
Mhm.
Well, yeah, but in
No, I'm with
general,
you.
if that's the case, I don't know, take off your shoes. There's many, many things if you're gonna be like, hey, so I'm gonna sneak around the house at night.
I'm gonna tell you,
Something.
Tony, that my house, nobody can sneak in it. No matter what, take off your shoes or whatever. It's creak, creak, creak everywhere.
That's true.
Well,
This
then you
this
notice
house, yeah.
So
that,
now
and
we
you're probably gonna be
know where to go do our Scooby Doo lark.
Yes.
yeah.
Yes, if we ever need to
But
film something for Fire Shark Productions that requires people to be creaky, go to our house.
but
Yes.
that's again, that's kind of to my point. If you know that, or you see that, or experience that, get better.
Yeah.
Like do things to help prevent that. But like anytime anybody goes sneaking around a place, it's very inept, and that's part of horror movies. I
To-
get it,
to-
but it's
Tony,
yeah.
you're so critical of these sneaking abilities. I have to ask: are you a spy?
Would I tell you if I was?
Right. Boom! There it is. All
Uh-huh.
right.
It's like when the students ask us at that one thing, like, "Are you a vampire?" Would I tell you?
Right.
I don't know. I mean, I guess under the right circumstances, that's usually you only tell somebody if you go, "Yes, I
When
am
you're
a
about,
vampire," but nobody's going to believe you,
Yes.
and when
or
you're
I'm
about
about
to
to
bite
attack.
them.
Yeah,
Exactly.
those are the two acceptable. Other times, I spell my name backwards, and somehow that fools people.
So
Alucard.
Anyway,
she goes,
oh man.
what are you doing down there?" And he goes, well, I'm hearing this weird stuff. Sounds like a girl moaning or crying, maybe. I want to
She's like,
check this
oh
out.
no, it's the wind. Don't go down there anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he's
That's
like,
where
I
it's really just disheveled and wind blows through it. Is a skylight in a
yes.
in a lower area, that's the basement skylight.
Right.
Basement.
It's nonsense. It's so I mean, and what's great is because of the intense cultural politeness of all of these characters, he can't go, "That's crazy, lady. I think there's
It's not
something
just
weird going on."
No, it's not
Yeah.
just cultural. If I'm staying at
Yeah.
someone's house and they go, "Don't go down there," I'm telling you that you don't have anything to worry about because it's just sound. I'm not going to be like, "Yeah, screw you. I'm going to go check out the basement."
Yeah.
Hold up
That's
while
not.
I kick in this door.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Like, no.
Yeah. So and then next, how does he wind up outside? I don't remember. He goes out looking into something, and that's when he gets attacked with an axe, although, the guy doesn't connect. The so what is he doing outside? Is he trying to find another way
I think he's trying to find
into
another way into
into the
he's
lower
looking for the
levels?
basement skylight,
Yeah.
of course.
And by the way, every time they go outside, they like interrupt just a whole bunch of either bats or
Birds.
birds
Yeah.
or whatever that make big screeching noises. Honestly, swear to God, I think they're using exactly the sound effect that was used in Hammer movies at about this time. Whenever somebody would interrupt a bunch of
Sounds like a Wilhelm scream of birds.
yes, I'm telling you, because it's also the same screechy bird sound that gets you. It's in the library somewhere. I have no doubt it's a needle drop from some bunch of sound effects because it's also in the Corman pictures. The Terror has this sound like several times when they interrupt crows. You hear this, wah, 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 and yeah. So the brother is still missing. eventually they leave in the morning because they're like, we're not going to learn anything here. That they do find evidence that the brother may have died because they find a bloody cufflink of his
And they find
near.
the broken sculpture at some point, the statue, whatever that he had brought.
Right. Although that has more meaning for them than it should, considering that we saw that the brother had it and he dropped it. That's not that big a deal when you consider that it doesn't mean anything because the mom said that he was there and he just
Well,
left.
but she didn't know, but she said I don't think he stayed the night, according to the mom. So it doesn't
Oh.
make sense for it to be in the
What's
bedroom.
her long game with this? Because
What?
she has to know that she's not going to be able to get away with this long term.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a really, really good point because
Well,
yes, the
she's
reality
not
is
doing anything.
she is covering for her daughter who we're going to find out at what's going on, but she's covering for her daughter who is murdering people like a vampire. And I don't know. I guess she's hoping that she can just cover it forever. By the way, knowing some crazy ass serial killers in reality, she might get away with that. You know, that's entirely possible that
Do
she
you
could
know?
just.
Do you know some crazy ass
No, I
serial
mean I don't personally know the serial killers. I'm just
Well,
saying.
again, how would you know?
How would you
Yeah.
know?
Like,
I mean, we do know Tony is something. We don't know if
who
it's
would
a
say
spy. It
yes
could
to
be a
that?
serial killer.
So instead,
Sadly,
Tony, this sneaking expert, he might be a serial killer. We don't know.
yeah,
If I'm gonna go with something, I'm gonna go with Vampire Spy.
Mhm.
right, exactly. Serial killer is like the grossest.
And
thing
Why
holy
is-
crap, that just reminds me, why hasn't there been a Vampire Spy movie?
Truth.
Why is that? Oh,
I
you're
don't
just
think there
wondering.
has been.
According-
I don't think I've ever seen a spy movie where. Oh well.
Hmm.
Anyway, I know
I'm
we're
thi- no, I'm
digressing, but-
thinking-
according
It's
to
another
you-
Fire Shark production.
That
According-
sigh was me thinking of what the heck is there one? And I'm not sure.
according to Kim Newman and the Anno Dracula series, James Bond is a fucking vampire. So
Well, there you go.
So that makes sense. I
But
guess
James
Yeah.
Bond is
in
a
Anna
Time Lord.
Dracula.
James Bond is a Time Lord. Just shush.
I'm actually going to be reading the Anna Dracula books over my vacation, and I'm really looking forward to
I
it.
think you'll really like. I think you'll really like them, Jason. I'll be interested
Yeah.
to talk to you about them.
I can't wait. It's something I'm super looking forward to. So next segment, they go into Info Dump City. Basically, they go to the little village where first they go talk to the county clerk,
That's the expedition. Oh.
and he says he just goes blah, 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 plot exposition that Yuko died in a car accident. The doctor was this guy, Dr. Yamaguchi. So then they go to Dr. Yamaguchi and they go, what do you know about the death of Yuko? And he goes, well, it's very interesting because he goes, oh, yeah, I was with her. She looked beautiful. She died of internal hemorrhaging, but she had a bloody shoulder. We've seen that the ghost has a bloody arm.
Broken.
But he also says, I believe that sometimes people can manifest themselves as sort of walking ghosts. Who,
No, that's not how what it is. They say, well, I think she's around because I saw her. And he's like, well, I don't know about that, but I'll tell you that one time this happened where this guy turned out to be turned into a ghost.
yes,
Back when I was in the
a
in the
walking
in
ghost,
the-
like
in
a body
war.
ghost. You know, like the
Yeah.
body can be buried, but there's also a body that is walking around. That is
I totally agree with
it's really strange and weird and difficult to understand, but it's not. And I'm not going to pretend to understand it, but I will say that I've read a number of Japanese ghost stories, and it's perfectly in keeping with a lot of that stuff.
Mhm.
You know, where ghosts are these strange. You know, in Western stories, we often talk about like ectoplasm, where the ghost will manifest like globby stuff.
Mhm.
These are just manifesting whole bodies, you know, and
No, but that's not what I got. I got what I understood it to be was basically they're just zombies, but they have part of their consciousness,
Yeah.
like part of their soul, part of their consciousness.
well,
So I
yeah,
think it actually
she
is
does
their
seem to
body.
be that, right?
Yeah.
Because very quickly in there, and I won't waste a bunch of time because we want to talk about the stuff involving it. He's going to reveal she was dying. The mother did not want her to die. Yuko did not want to die, and so he hypnotized her to arrest her death. And so now her body is walking around, essentially
Well,
dead but
yeah.
trapped.
So, but okay, but I think it's important to note, and this is the
Yes.
case for both the ghosts he talks about and also about Yuko, is that it's not the person's personality, it's their anger. Like it's
Oh,
that they held on, that the part that they're holding on to is the hatred and anger. So they've let go of the loving kindness part, but they're keeping the hatred and anger, and so that's what is motivating her now. She's not Yuko anymore.
yeah.
And the same thing with Sky. But I just wanted to add one thing real quick about the doctor, and that's it. Right at the end, he's like, yeah, this ghost, blah blah blah, and he goes, but I shouldn't talk about such things. I'm a man of science.
Oh, yes.
I just love that. I thought
Man,
that
I've
was
seen
so
tons of
funny.
ghosts, and I totally believe in ghosts. But science, y'all. I mean,
I'm a man of
yes.
science. It is a great moment. It
Look,
would.
a bear. Like, no, I mean, not occult stuff. So, I mean, science. Yes, please get out of my office.
Yeah, he says something like, "I'm not an expert, but I'm making a lot of study of it," which is such
Yeah.
a weird thing for a doctor to
I
say.
think this is all he says that so that it doesn't seem completely out of left field that he's a hypnotist later.
Right. I guess so. That's true. Well, and he's also, we find out he is the one who murdered. This is stuff that they find out, but Yuko was born of a sexual assault on Yuko's mom when when an assailant broke into their home and killed everyone except for Genzo, the servant who was away on some errand that he was supposed to do.
He
He's
was
at the axe chopping convention.
Yes,
Like,
you know,
proper techniques.
I don't know how you take that servant and you like give him a train ticket and tell him to go to town, because this is a strange dude. But
Maybe he wasn't that odd back then.
that's very
Possibly.
true. He may not have been. Well said. So Genzo was out, and the assailant broke in, killed everybody, sexually assaulted Yuko's mom, and out of that came Yuko. And the mom tried to kill herself, but she didn't. And now she walks around as just like, in other words, tragedy and mourning drip in this building. And that's another thing that is so like Edgar Allan Poe. That's why, in a way, to me, this is not even really a vampire movie. This is a weird Poe pastiche to me.
Right.
But
It's funny how if you look at this from a different angle though, it's almost like a Rorschach test
yeah,
of like which
well said.
Western horror you're going to see, because like Tony brought up Hammer, I brought up like the Old Dark House, and then you bring up Poe, which is of course all stuff that like feeds in to each
Yeah.
other.
Yeah, it's all true. Yeah, that's
yeah. Like even the fact that this is like structured like a mystery.
Yes.
Like you have these two kids, and I made the Scooby-Doo joke earlier, but like
But you're totally right.
Yeah, you have these two kids that are wandering around trying to solve this mystery, and it's kind of fascinating to see all that stuff flow through this. But as Tony said, it is still a very, very Japanese movie, even to the like down to the like the way they talk about how the daughter wasn't cremated, and how like he acts like that's so strange. Whereas, like, if this was an American film, no one would think no one would think twice about a body not being cremated.
I love the moment, speaking of the Scooby-Doo-ness, anytime you have a film where somebody walks in with a gun in their hand and starts telling you what actually happened that dark, stormy night, oh my God, I'm so happy.
Before you go too far down that, because I do want you to tell me if you found the answer about what kind of gun that was. But you didn't say one of the more, well, not the most important, but one important thing about the fact that he is the one who killed everybody and raped them. It's because she was his fiance when he went away to war. When he came back, she had married somebody else. Yes. And so he was so upset that he killed her husband and then raped her. But,
how crazy is it though that he banks on her forgetting and just is like, yeah, I'm the town doctor.
Right. Yeah, that's a really solid
point. He doesn't
point.
leave town and he's like, whoa, that was really messed up. He decided
he said he was going to watch after them, and so he stayed in town to watch after them.
Yeah, but wow.
Yeah.
You're man.
Well, the
So he
assumption
That's a
breaks
lot
into
of that's
his
hubris.
you're saying that
yeah,
there's an assumption that she's not going to do anything about it. Not,
not
Oh,
of
that
gonna
course
she's
she
turn
knows
him
never
who he
gonna
in.
is.
remember.
No, of
Like
course
she's
she
never
knows
gonna
who he
remember.
is. She has to remember who he is because he was her fiance. No, I think it's more that that he just assumes that she won't ever tell it. She won't ever say it because it's shameful. Because the thing is, if the daughter is, well, no, I guess they do know. People do
No,
know
but
what would happen.
you I think you nailed it with with the shame and secrecy is what's going on. He
Yeah.
breaks in, he he rapes her, he murders everybody. She tries to kill herself. But one thing she
Mhm.
does not do is call anything like the
Right.
police and say
Yeah.
my ex-fiance broke in and murdered everybody
Hmm.
and also raped me. That doesn't happen. So
Right.
that is super strange, but it is very much in keeping with like a gothic horror story where
Hmm.
there are secrets upon secrets upon secrets, and usually at the end of a story like this, the the other characters who are usually younger, part of a different generation, go, how come nobody's talked about this? Like these are
Well, but
things that we
even
could have
now,
talked about out
yeah.
loud, and
Even
nobody
now,
has.
we see what happens when sexual assault survivors get come out and say what happened. People go, "Well, did it really? Maybe you just had he's had sex with him now. You want to get him back, or maybe you were dressed a certain
Right.
way, or you drank too much." I mean, it's of course. So even now, they don't say what happened because a lot of people because they know that it's not going to go
No, you're right.
with
That's
people that
true.
expect
So
you.
so she has walked around as, in a sense, a kind of a ghost of herself.
Mhm.
You know, she bears that scar. She is in a way very ghostly. She's always very quiet. I'm talking about Mrs.
Super
Yuko's mom,
Zen,
and
yeah.
super zen, and she is also now covering for the ongoing crimes of her demented zombie daughter Yuko,
It's
who is
Nonomura is her last name. Mrs. Nonomura.
Mrs. Nonomura. Yeah, and she's wonderful, by the way. I mean, she's really cool, and I do love how the young couple are so kind of more hip seeming, and so how much they get to be kind of like us, going, "Oh, this place and these people are pretty wacky," you know, and that you get to the final scene with all of its big reveals, and when it's amazing because Yuko makes her appearance and we don't know exactly what is going to happen. You know, he's
Well,
not sure if she's going to. Yeah, go ahead.
well, I also don't want to gloss over. So while more stuff happens where Keiko takes off and to go find out what happened, the guy comes up and goes, "Hey, I know what happened. By the way, like you were saying, like she wasn't cremated. Let's go check it out." Which is a very
Yeah,
Hammer. Like so now they're going to go dig up the body, and which is great, but it's also very like that's the kind of vampire Dracula stuff you expect, right?
Right.
yeah,
It's not a thing until someone's exhuming something.
They they
yeah.
they dig up they dig
Well
up the
said.
body, and for some reason, there's a doll in the grave that has a
A spring
spring
loaded.
load that she just pops out of the grave whenever it opens. It was
I
super
mean,
funny.
it's ridiculous in that somebody would do that, but what an amazing jump scare.
That was
Yes,
awesome.
And it's nice when a jump scare happens and then also, is translated on screen where the guy's like, "I'm out."
Yeah.
yes,
And
yeah,
while he's running, that's when Yuko shows up again to him.
yeah,
And then also, Genzo
Kills the guy.
decides, well, it's also time to take care of business because we can't have this dude running around exhuming things that we don't want exhumed, even though we've spring loaded dolls into it. But
yeah.
okay. Um, you know,
I liked
uh,
what you said, Tony, about how you need to have an exhumation, and kind of in a way I think all of us have been talking about these different Western influences. I think the creators here making this movie are thinking like, what do we got to have? Like, what do we got to have to do this homage? You know, we got a big dark house, the creepy servant. We got to have lightning, and and like a big reveal, like a Agatha Christie kind of reveal at the end. And we got to have a guy dig up a corpse. I mean, it's true. It inspires me to go, well, how can I just get a whole bunch of pieces and figure out how to string them together and then create a plot that somehow somehow drives all of those things.
yeah. And
Um,
I mean, it's a huge scene with Genzo attacking yet again, and finally meeting his doom off of a cliff. Which again, cliffside battles also great.
Yes.
Never fail to be exciting in
Yep.
these kind of movies. So
But,
Even in Disney movies.
Was I the only one that was surprised that Genzo didn't come back?
Oh, I was wondering. I mean, it would have. I don't know if I was surprised, but I wouldn't have been surprised if he was,
Well, the
came
fact
rushing
that she
through the
even
door.
asks, "Are
Right.
you sure he's dead?" I was like, "Oh, well, he's gonna pop back up." No,
Sure.
didn't happen.
Maybe it's on the cutting room floor.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of, this thing is a short movie. This movie is like an hour and 11 minutes long. It's barely feature length, what we would call I'm not even sure it would qualify as a feature, actually, today in the United States, because 71 minutes, I don't even know how you call that a feature. That's like a long Columbo episode. It's very strange how I don't know why it's that short. It's fine. I actually, to be honest, kind of wish we had more 70-minute movies, but I was
It's
shocked by that.
funny. We were talking about the length of Avengers Endgame,
Yeah.
which was a 3-hour long movie that did not feel long to me, and this was like an hour and 11 minutes, and it felt, because of the sort of the pacing, it
Yes.
felt like a much longer movie to me. So
No, you're absolutely correct, because this movie is very talky. The people who, like, you and I are enjoying it. We're having a good time watching it, but I think we're aware at the same time that you have to be ready for what kind of movie this is, and be at home with just sort of sitting back like you're on a slow moving ride and just sort of admiring the stuff that's going on.
honestly, like, I think also, like, ideal like, I feel like the way, even though I enjoyed the movie and I'm definitely enjoying talking about it, like, the best way to watch this movie would be like in the middle of a thunderstorm,
Yes.
possibly by yourself.
Yes.
Like, I think that's like this is like, it's a very quote unquote spooky movie, and I think, watching it in that kind of environment would have been my ideal, not like the way I did, which is like, I came home, it was still daylight out, I made myself a ham sandwich, and I just sort of sat down and watched it.
Yeah. Yeah. So that brings us to this point where the Doctor has done all of his reveals. We've learned the way that the mystery occurred. We've learned who did the killing. And bringing all of this truth out is what will what will fix it all. And when Yuko makes her appearance, that's when she sits on the Doctor like lightning. She just comes like, whoomp. She flies towards the camera, and he does it. The director does it this way. I guess it's a stop motion in a sense. She
It's like
just
a series of cuts.
yes,
It's fantastic. It looks great.
Yes, this is like a 95-cent special effect, and it is wonderful.
It's very grisly.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know that I was expecting that much gore from a movie that's probably not even rated.
Yeah.
It's really the only like, there's blood throughout this movie, but it's like we see the after effects of her killings a lot. That, like, the way, like, that blood geyser just sort of goes.
She slashes his throat, and he just goes, "Bleh." Yeah, it's everywhere. And
It's
human
in every samurai
Pez
movie.
human Pez the Spencer.
The problem with that is that she slashes we're talking about the Doctor here. She slashes the Doctor's throat. But the problem is that we've heard from the mom that there is no way for her to be released from her state that she's in, except for by the actual hypnotist. And I guess that killing the hypnotist releases her. So but unbeknownst to her, by killing him, she also killed herself.
Yeah. So she
she wanted to die anyway.
I think so.
She gets.
Oh yeah,
she's free.
she's telling people to kill her. That's right. She's free.
She's free now, and that's the big deal.
That's true.
Which in classic Universal monsters, style, this monster that she is also kind of sad and pathetic.
Yes.
So even though she's powerful in a way.
There was a moment that we didn't mention, but it was like the only other moment that is worth bringing up, which is that when they found the body of the murdered brother, it was in the basement room where Yuko stays, and she just sort of hangs out in sleep on a bed. She's not in a coffin or anything like that. She's just uh laying on the bed. It is really she's very frightening. I mean, she's just really, really, it is such a weird concept, and that's what I want to like go back to for a moment here. So that's what happens to Yuko. She is a living ghost, kind of. I mean, the mother refers to her kind of as a vampire ghost, I think she says, or something like that. But I don't even. She's an amalgam of a whole bunch of things, because in a way she's just a dead person, or a brain dead person whose body is animated and has cravings to murder people. That makes no sense. I mean, I don't. She's a unique monster, basically, is all I can say about that. They do not give her fangs. These guys are well aware of vampire movies. That we're going to watch two more, and in the next two, there are actual traditional European vampires with sharp fangs. That's not the case with Yuko. She just is smiley and carries a gold dagger, which is pretty awesome. So yeah, we don't even see the good guys get away. They presumably leave, so but the movie is done. There's no Dame Newmont, no nothing. Once they're dead, everybody is standing around the living room, and we cut to the closing credits. Is there anything else that I've forgotten to touch on here?
So, by the way, the doctor stopping them with a gun, gun he kept. We find out the reveal. That's also a big deal, because all things considered, like weapons, guns in Japan, and even
It's a really
bladed
good
weapons
point.
over a certain length are at this point, a big deal on how you have them. So him stopping them with a gun, it doesn't matter as much in gangster movies, but you kind of expect that.
Yeah.
So the surprise of, oh crap, he's stopping us with a weapon, is something that we've seen a million times in the West, but it is like, whoa, where'd you get that kind of thing, that you may not think about if you're not kind of in that mindset.
It's a really, really wonderful point. Yes,
Did you
and
figure
it
out what kind of
appears
gun
to
it
be
was?
his. I didn't. IMFDB doesn't have this movie listed. It looks to me like a. It looks like a Luger, but I'm not really certain what kind of pistol this is,
If anybody
and
listening knows, let us
can
know.
identify this pistol with a very large barrel. It's an unusual looking gun, and I'd love to know what it is. But it's clearly one that he kept around from World War II. As always, we've talked about how movies in the 60s and 70s are, well, 60s more than 70s, are haunted by the war. And this one is too, because the doctor's rage, which causes him to destroy this family, all has to do with things that happened, during the war. The war is inescapable in Japanese horror, strangely enough. So yeah, and thank you for bringing that up about the gun, Tony. Well, we should get our final thoughts, and and if there's anything that we've forgotten, we can touch on it here. But also, don't forget, we're going to do two more movies in this cycle. So as we begin to see more patterns, we can bring it up. What we've learned so far at the beginning of the cycle is it seems to be deeply aware of Universal and Corman Poe and Hammer, and it is going to be eager to use all of them. And I don't know anything about the next two movies. I don't know if they're in the same universe, or if they're just just have some of the same sensibilities. I literally have no idea. Never seen them. So yeah,
I've seen bits of I've seen all of Lake of Dracula because I had to watch that. So I wasn't intentional lie, but that one was one I just had to get out of the way, because I think Drew mentioned it Like, I wonder if this is the one I remember. I am saving Evil of Dracula though. So,
Mm,
but I watched Lake of Dracula a long time ago when I first got this Blu-ray. So it'll be
mm.
cool to revisit it. But yeah, there's vampire stuff galore in those.
Oh, I'm excited. The one of the things I'm really looking forward to, and I have not seen it, is that even though it's a super Western looking vampire played by a Japanese actor, he has a long white scarf because of the death associations of white. How awesome is that?
Oh
I
man,
mean,
the clips I've seen of that are pretty amazing.
oh, can't wait. Anyway, okay, so let's get our final thoughts, and then we'll come around for endorsements. Tony Salvaggio, we have now kicked off Bloodthirsty with the Vampire Doll. What a crazy title. What are your thoughts?
I really enjoy this. I think it's amazing that at any given time, now there's still tons of stuff I want to see now. Again, Kim Newman, Anna Dracula, Kim Newman gives a really cool history on the Blu-rays,
Yeah,
and he mentions a bunch of movies that I need to check out. Koroneko, which is on Criterion. Some
Yuki
cool directors. Yeah, there's just some cool stuff that I need to dig up now. These movies, just all the color pops. It's just crazy we get to see these great prints. Thanks to Arrow for going ahead with this.
Yeah,
We've also seen Wolf Cop and what is it, Doberman Cop as well come out. There's all this stuff you can dig deeper, but there's all this stuff that's been bootlegged. That's the only way you could get it for years. And some, catalog from a zine that also sold all kinds of sundry, just weird, bizarre, torture porn kind of horror that you couldn't get anywhere else, or super
mhm.
gore fiend, gore hound kind of stuff. And some of that was cool at the time as well, just because that's the only way you could get it. But having this, getting to see this cool time capsule of a Toho movie, they have, and there's more. Like, I wish we got to see tons more of this kind of films, and we got 2 more coming up, which is great. I really enjoyed. I love the color. I love the nods to Hammer. I could watch possibly an infinite amount of things in
Yeah,
this, like this. As surreal as it is, you kind of have to be in a certain mindset to watch them, but I would get in that mindset and watch them many, many, many times. So I'm super
wonderful.
glad we're covering all of this, and I'm glad everybody seems to enjoy it too. Because when I bring things like this, it's of a certain, there's definitely, it's paced
Yeah,
differently. It looks different. There's cultural differences, and I'm happy that the crew is along for the ride.
that's wonderful. Well said. Drew, what are your thoughts?
Well, I'm going to continue on the stream of consciousness that Tony was already on. Yes, this is different, but it's also familiar. It's weird, but it's also cliche. Dare I say, Transylvania by way of Tokyo. So
Sure.
I think that there is a lot that, if you are a fan of classic American or Western horror of a certain style, that you will get out of this movie. Like, if you already like Universal Monsters or Hammer or Roger Corman, Vincent Price Poe movies, I think that this is going to speak to you on a certain level, like in a way that maybe another Japanese movie might not. And I definitely, watching this was a way for me to appreciate stuff that I already appreciate more, and like on another level, because I really like this kind of horror movie, and there's only so many of them that came out from the era that I do usually go back to, which is like the 30s and 40s. So the fact that this is like kind of like finding a lost Universal Monsters movie,
Yeah,
but with like a different spin on it. So I really, like, I know some of our listeners might go, "Oh, Japanese movie, not for me. I don't want to read subtitles. It sounds kind of slow." I don't want to watch that. I think you should compartmentalize this and go, no, this is this has all the stuff that you like, just slightly different.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping the rest of these movies kind of follow in that style, because I enjoy that. Like, I enjoy seeing the sort of comfy, familiar horror tropes reinterpreted by this other culture. Like, that really does something for me.
Wonderful. Well said. Julia, what are your thoughts?
So yeah, for me, I think I pretty much said everything. I love that it's clearly a set, this house that they're in, because they've painted, like they've painted the crown molding and the paneling and the chair rails onto the wall. So that kind of was funny. But it's neat. I mean, there's just some fun things, and like we've talked about, the acting feels very real to me. Like they don't feel like they're just, I don't know. It doesn't feel like acting. And I really liked the mom. I think the mom is probably she is very elegant. She wears her kimono, and she seems to be so classy, but I think part of it is also just the trauma that she's just checked out. There's so much bad stuff has happened. She's just checked out. She's not feeling anything. She's not, reacting to anything. It's like, okay, I'm just gonna back away now, because I don't know what to do with this situation or whatever, but she seems to handle everything really in stride. So I think there's some neat characters, not the least of which is the vampire. Yeah, I think, and like I said, that I love the idea of being able to trap a soul. I mean, I think I hate it. I hate the idea. It's horrible. But being able to trap half of a soul or part of a soul by hypnotizing the person when they die, I thought was really interesting. So yeah, I think it was a fun find, or whatever you call it, a fun discovery for me. And thanks, Tony, for bringing it to us.
One of the things that I really love here is, I talk all the time about the trappings of Gothic, but one of the things that I always forget is the importance of a plot that's coming to a head, which we talked about how the pacing is often a little languid, but at the end here, it does what all good Gothic tales always do, which is that tonight is the night you, the viewer, get to be in on the night when all the secrets will be revealed. So if you're going to do it right, there's going to be thunder clapping, and all the secrets will be revealed, and people are going to wind up dead, and as happens here, our young lovers are going to get away. All of that is delivered. I really enjoyed this, and also when you think about it, if you think about like 1970, going to the movie theater and watching this, what a wonderful film this would be, to like catch on at a drive-in or on a date at the movies, in 1970. I was just thinking how beautiful that would be. In fact, I would love to see this at the Alamo. I would, if I found out Alamo was playing it in a couple of weeks, I would go in a heartbeat. Even though we
I
just watched it.
think, and I'm not positive, I'll have to check again. I think AFS may have shown the trilogy. I have to double
Fantastic.
check. I want to say somebody did actually do that not too long ago. If that happened, I think I remember I was on Crunch and was sad. Happy I had the Blu-rays. That was nice, but it would have been so cool to see it. Maybe they'll do another screening.
It happens to me all the time, by the way. Something that you'll have access to in high def, on Prime, or I have the Blu-ray. But if I find out that it's showing at the C in Denver, or at the Alamo in Denver, or your respective art houses, go anyway. It doesn't matter if you have the opportunity to watch Purple Rain on a Blu-ray at home. If you find out Purple Rain is playing at the Alamo, go watch Purple Rain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's actually what's a shame about the Fox merger, is it does appear that a lot of repertory screenings are gonna get killed because I guess it's what Disney doesn't do that as much.
That's really interesting. No, I didn't know anything about that.
Alien, Die Hard, etc. Good luck. Or Aliens, I want to say. Good luck. Those repertory screenings probably won't happen with the frequency they used to, if at all.
You know who's doing really good ones? Is the Fathom events. They'll do You know, a lot of really great live stuff, but also, well, they'll do a lot of the riff tracks things where they'll show, you know, and occasionally they'll show an old film, like, you know, some art film or whatever that they're just doing, and they'll broadcast it live around the country, you know. So I'm really loving with. But I had no idea that these repertory showings were in danger. That's interesting. Well, let's get that sounded like a weird mini endorsement out of nowhere, but whatever. Let's get endorsements. Tony, do you have anything to share with us this week?
So
And I know I've been on crunch, so I don't even know if I have anything, but I'm dying to know if what you've got.
I have a few things actually.
Oh, good.
Kim Newman, you know, like I mentioned the director Nobuo Nakagawa, who did some cool movies that I need to check out. Like I haven't seen these, but they look great. Black Cat Mansion, The Ghost of Yatsuya, The Sinners of Hell. I should just put up the list and we can all try to find them. That's super cool. If you are kind of want to, in addition to these movies we're going to be covering over the next couple of podcasts, I think I'd mentioned before, Criterion has it's called Eclipse Series 37, When Horror Came to Shochiku, and it has the X from Outer Space, Goki the Body Snatcher from Hell, The Living Skeleton, and Genocide. And that is a really cool collection of Japanese horror. On the Criterion tip, I subscribe to the Criterion channel, and in addition to some just all kinds of cool stuff, a lot of the older Godzilla movies are on there, and I'm hoping that they're going to do some kind of Blu-ray release because they look amazing. I don't even have the fastest internet connection. I don't have a 4K TV, but I was watching like even goofy ones like Godzilla versus Megalon look fantastic on the Criterion channel. It's pretty amazing. And then finally, you know, we did the interviews with Shout Factory, and we are talking about them all the time. Unfortunately, their Roku app isn't working that well right now.
Yeah, no, it's not working
Supposedly
at all
they're
right
going to
now.
fix it. It's a whole thing. But American Genre Film Archive here in Austin, you know, tied to the Draft House, has partnered with Shout Factory to distribute you know, repertory screenings of tons of cool movies. Just so many cool movies, including like classics like Battle Beyond the Stars, I Married a Witch, Galaxy of Terror, which is a crazy one, but just all these Chopping Mall, you know, just weird, like off the chain kind of stuff. Piranha, Rock and Roll High School. We should post the link, but it's a really cool partnership. Since AGFA has access to prints of this stuff, you know, kind of putting it all together, you know, and they've had several others, Arrow and Severin and Vinegar Syndrome, but you know, this partnership with Shout is pretty darn cool. So I think that's awesome. And I'll say I have another one, but I'll save it for next time, so I actually have stuff. But AGFA's doing some really cool stuff. So yeah,
That's wonderful. Thank you very much, Mr. Drew. Do you have anything to endorse?
I'm all selfish all the time this
Excellent.
week because I have a new comic out on Comixology. It is Lucy Chaplin Science Starlet Hellhole Part 1 of 2, written by myself, of course, art by Andrea Montano, and layout and colors by April Guadiana, and edited by my wife and of course Mr. Jason Henderson here. And so like a great creative team on this. It looks wonderful, and I'm just gonna say this: Lady Werewolf Bikers. If that does not sound like your idea of a good time, what is wrong with you? So, why are you even listening to this podcast? Because I'm pretty sure you don't like the things that we talk about. So yeah, this is Lucy versus a all-female biker gang of werewolf bikers. It's got it leans heavy into Russ Meyer territory. So I get to play out that influence as heavily as I've always wanted to. And again, very, very good looking comic. I'm extremely happy with how it turned out. We're working hard on getting part 2 out as quickly as possible. All my recent health issues kind of slowed that down, but part 1 is out. It's on Comixology. When you're done listening to this podcast, go there, buy the comic, because like everybody, they're talking about, everybody's geek chic this weekend. Everybody's like, oh, Avengers Endgame, oh, Game of Thrones. Love that stuff. That stuff's great. Also support indie comics, and you can support my indie comic tonight after you're done listening to this podcast on Comixology. Okay, I'm done. I'm done talking about my stuff.
I have to admit, Drew, whenever I see the title, though, I play the Spinal Tap song in my head.
Is that wrong?
It's not. I mean, that's up to you, but that's every time I see the title, all I hear is the
okay.
Spinal Tap.
Well, then maybe that my question should be: is it wrong that makes me happy?
Yes. It's probably on. Well, no, it's not wrong that makes you happy. I'm just agreeing.
I'm glad.
That is a thing.
That it wouldn't. But that's my admission today.
I love it.
That's what happens every time I see the comic book title.
Julia,
I allow you to think that, but only if you read it. Bribery.
Fair.
Julia, what do you have for us?
Was there anything this week at all oh yeah, that's right. Endgame took my money and I was happy to give it to them.
Yeah.
I was among the idiots that crashed the interwebs the first few minutes that the tickets went sale, and among the people who made the Thursday preview a record-breaking $60 million and the opening weekend a record-breaking $1.2 billion worldwide for Avengers Endgame, and it was worth it. I loved it. It was fun. I'm not going to spoil anything because Tony hasn't watched it and other people listening haven't watched it, so I'm not going to say even what I loved about it, but it was just awesome, and I hope everyone who wants to see it gets to see it very soon.
Although on social media tonight, while we were recording this episode, somebody did actually request that we talk about it next week after we've all seen it. So we may do a mini discussion.
Yeah. Sounds good. Can't wait.
Yeah, we'll either do it as a separate mini episode or just tack it on at the end of this episode or of that episode. So whatever. We'll probably tack it on at the end. And yes. Well, thank you, Julia. And by the way, second endorsement for Hellhole from Drew. Not least of which, yes, I am biased because I was one of the editors on that book, but I really love it. I love the art. It's a blast, and I'm just so proud to be a part of a tiny part of Halloween Man. And I don't have anything else because Julia talked about Endgame, and I have been heads down trying to deliver Young Captain Nemo book 2, which is due on Wednesday. So I'm in crunch mode. But I did take the time to watch Endgame, and I'm super stoked about that. So there's that. With that, we will wrap it here. We will be back next week to talk about the second of the Bloodthirsty Trilogy, which I believe it's Evil of Dracula is next, right? Or is Lake of Dracula next?
Lake of Dracula, I believe.
Lake of Dracula.
Which is, I think, the one that I saw as a kid. I will be interested if that is correct.
That's actually why I wanted to cover it next. Was I gotta find out if that's the one for Drew.
I've been looking for it since I was a kid. I've been wanting to see it since I was a kid, and I never got to. I would look for them, and they were just nowhere in sight. So then they came out on Blu-ray, and I've been sitting on these Blu-rays for whatever it is, like nearly a year. So I am so stoked to finally get to talk about these. We'll be back next week with Lake of Dracula. Until then, be excellent to each other. I'm so happy that this cast is back. Although I'm so thankful to the group that we had, and we missed them, and we'll see them soon.
Well, I want to thank people for holding down the fort while I was trying to
Adam and David mostly.
Yeah, I love both those guys. They're good human beings.
They're wonderful. I was so excited that you got a chance to meet. You met David last year at least, and you met him several times, and then Adam, you got a chance to meet last summer. So
did.
yeah, so it's
And
that was-
they're two of my favorite human beings on the planet. So I'm very, very happy they survived Thanos's finger snap.
I have to say, it's so interesting to me that, every one of you guys, and I guess hopefully Jamie and I are the same, have a completely different perspective, different personality, different voices. It's like and so I think it's great that no matter who we have, it feels like like a neat, fresh thing to have that person, and then you don't kind of go, you could sub in whoever. I just love it. So I enjoy having David, I enjoy having Adam, and I certainly enjoy having our original cast. I love it when Jamie's on. I think it's just fun, and so there's nobody that doesn't bring something unique and interesting, in my opinion. So hopefully some of the fans agree. But anyway,
Huzzah.
so I've just really enjoyed it.
wonderful.
I am always afraid though when anybody's gone. Well, this is me because I'm weirdo this way. Like I am always afraid that somebody out there, and I'm sure it happens, is just going to be like, "Oh no, it was so much better without him," or whatever. Because that's the kind of weirdo dumb things I think about.
I
But,
think everybody thinks about that, Tony. Seriously, whenever Jamie comes on, I'm always like, they're not going to want me to come back. Jamie's awesome.
You're awesome too.
I know.
Everybody gets to be awesome.
Yes.
I mean, I agree. This is just the things I'm like, oh no, what if, and again, when enough people listen to anything, there's gonna be a few people that are, there's gonna be some people who go, oh, that's cool. I'm glad that the original cast is back. There's probably gonna be also some people going, oh man,
Yeah.
another one with that.
I was more mystified when I did finally meet David that he told me that he thought that I was going to be a very large, imposing man based on my voice. And I guess I sound different than I think I sound. But it is interesting what people think you look like based off of your voice alone.
That really
Oh yeah,
frightens
David's
me.
take on all of us was supremely interesting.
Yeah.
I was fascinated.
Oh yeah,
I mean, I
right.
get the same thing when I do Deserts of Mars. Like people go, oh, I want to. Wow, where did that Tony come from?
Yeah.
I guess because I sing different than they imagine. I don't
Well,
know.
that's true.
What
That's totally true.
I don't know what they imagine. I'm always curious. It baffles me. But I mean. Yeah, people seem to dig it, but it's always fascinating to me because like when I'm on stage, it's not a thing where I purposely have a persona. You want to put on a show, but it's not. There's no Alice Cooper, for example, for me, right? It's me just on stage. But I've had multiple people say things like, "Wow, that was really cool." It was so different to see you how you are on stage. I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah.
It's always
Well,
happened to me when people. I mean, since it's an audio podcast, when people go, "I thought you would be like this." It seems most people seem to be pretty complimentary, and that's fine. I don't want to hear if somebody thinks, "Oh, I'm so disappointed now." But
well, for the record, I look exactly like The Rock.
And I, much like my name, look exactly like Julia Roberts. So there you go.
Aha.
Nobody find any photos. We're gonna keep this going.
Well, I mean, what we have now wonderfully, and we've got the little cartoon figures on the Facebook. So if you just assume that we look like the cartoon figures, I think that's
it's pretty close.
I'm definitely satisfied with that. It even has my glasses, so there we go. All right, man. I'm really happy that we talked about this. I will see everybody next week. Thank you and good night. Good night.
Good night.